Welcome to episode 620 of the High Performance Mindset. I'm so grateful that you are here, and you are here because you want to be the best that you can be. You have very high standards for yourself, and you want to gain the competitive advantage. That is why Lynne Jensen-Nelson is here today with us. After earning a master's degree, she rose from the ranks of frontline sales to corporate executive leadership. Lynne has founded now Conversion-omics Speakers and Consultants to help organizations create true competitive advantage. And today, this company has grown to over 90 professional speakers and consultants who are experts in virtually all topic areas. And I am one of those 90 speakers that are listed within Conversion-omics. Now, in this episode, Lynne and I talk about 4 components of competitive advantage. How to consider your mindset, your skill set, and your tool set to gain a competitive advantage. The 4 P's of confidence to consider when thinking about a competitive advantage. The 2 most important things you should do with those that you work with, and some language to use and language to lose. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for listening, and let's go ahead and welcome Lynne to the episode. Welcome to the High Performance Mindset. I'm so excited that you're here today, Lynne Jensen-Nelson. And if you are not watching us on YouTube, you don't know that we're both wearing our cobalt blue jackets with a floral undershirt. And this is like, our standard. And one of the ways that we bond is over our love for cobalt blue.
Yes, that's true. It was one of the first things we found out we had in common is our intense love for the color.
And shopping and lots of other things.
Exactly. So many things. Yeah,
so many things. Well, I'm just really excited to have you on the podcast and to learn more about what you've been working on and to help the audience really to have a competitive advantage. And I think that's where we should start, Lynne, is we should start about talking about what it means to have a competitive advantage and tell us about what that means to you and how it applies to everyone who's listening.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for having me today. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, so I appreciate being here and talking with all of your wonderful guests that are fans of your podcast. So, here's the thing. When it comes to competitive advantage, the world is a competitive place. So whether you're an elite athlete, whether you're running a business, frankly, just getting your ideas and your vote and everything else out there, we want to make sure that we're aware there's a lot of noise going on right now. They call it marketplace blur. There's many different options out there. And so really thinking about what do I do? How do I set myself up to differentiate from some of the other options that are out there? So whether you're a keynote speaker, you're a business leader, a business owner, just understanding what differentiates you from the other options that are available. And what we know about that, when we talk competitive advantage, I always feel like I want to clarify, it's not about bringing anybody else down. It's just making sure that you set yourself up for success in any way that you can. And really focusing on capitalizing on your strengths, understanding the challenges. And I love the concept, and I'm sure that you are a fan, or at least you've read James Clear and that whole concept of atomic habits. And how do I look at my opportunities for improvement and get 1% better? That's really something when it comes to competitive advantage, making sure that we're constantly striving to grow and improve. One of the things I learned early on is that we're all a work in progress. So no matter where you are, every day we're getting better, we're getting worse. Even when we're at the top of our game, nothing promises you to stay there forever. And so really being able to assess your strengths and weaknesses and work to improve them is a big part of everything that we do every day.
Yeah, that's wonderful then. And when you think about where should we kind of get started as we're thinking about our competitive advantage, because I'm thinking about myself, right? I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I have a company called the Mentally Strong Institute. And so I'm also thinking about that and how can I make sure that we have a competitive advantage? So where do we get started as we're thinking about this idea?
That's such a great question. Here's what I recommend, and here's usually where I start. So this might be an exercise that's great for you, certainly for your listeners. I like to start with this, and I always say, all right, we're going to grab a piece of paper, right? Piece of paper, we grab something to write with, we draw a line down the middle. And we start by talking about this concept of control. So on the left side, I ask people to write down, what is everything that's outside your control? So Sindra, in your business, again, if you're an athlete, what's outside your control? Your age, how long your legs are. There's a lot of things that are out, what's going on economically, politically, what's happening as far as your industry that you specialize in. So on the left, we make a list, everything outside our control. And there's a lot of things that go on that list, but let's just pay attention to it. And then on the other side, we write what's inside our control. So as you look at yourself and you figure out, okay, this is what I control. And that's where when we talk later on, we're going to talk about mindset, skill set, and tool set. What are those things that we can control? And when I have people go through this exercise, a lot of things show up with that outside my control. Other people, sometimes it's the weather, sometimes it's attitudes, it's approaches, it's other responsibilities in my life, how many hours I have in a day, what are the resources being provided by my employer? There's a whole bunch of things that's outside my control. But really at the top for most people, and probably Sindra for you too, if you were going through this exercise, one of the big things that's in our control is our attitude, our approach, how we take care of ourselves, how we set ourselves up for the day, what kind of preparation do we do? And as you know better than probably anyone, being a sports psychologist and an expert on that, is that attitude is everything. How do we approach it? Do we put the time and energy and effort into setting ourselves up for success? And successful people focus on what we can control. And having that mindset as we go into it just helps us be successful no matter what we do. And that helps us have more of a competitive advantage. But let's focus. And that's something, even with my own team, we always have a saying, every problem has a solution. And I've always said this, like, this is just a mindset I always try to have. And I want to be that solution provider. But boy, some days are rough. Some days are tough. And so it's funny. I had a situation recently where it just, it was just a big obstacle and I thought we'd overcome it, but we didn't. It came back. And my team member had to kind of prop me up and say it right back to me. Hey, Lynn, every problem has a solution. Let's figure that out. And I find that going through this control exercise really helps us focus on, where do we go from here? What do we need to do? Because we know, and athletes are such a perfect example. Look at the amazing athletes that exist that probably shouldn't have, but they figured out how to control, they were too short or they had asthma or they, didn't have the right physique and they still figured out ways to be successful. And I think that applies just as clearly to the business world as well.
Absolutely. Even with the research shows, I was just reading some of it yesterday. I'm teaching an online class called Psychology of Coaching right now.
Love it.
And so I was rereading some of the research and it shows that actually mastery, your commitment to practice is more predictive of your success than your genetics, right? And so
True.
You're absolutely right. And Lynn, when you were saying that, I wrote down a couple of things I could control that I think are connected to my competitive advantage. And I wrote down, I can control my work ethic and I can control my marketing and I can control my branding and I can control my risk taking.
Yes. Risk. I mean, you've got to put yourself out there. I'm not a sports expert, but it's that Wayne Gretzky quotation, right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And that understanding your comfort with risk. And frankly, right now, people are becoming more and more risk averse. And so, a lot of that deals with COVID. So other parts of success, flexibility, adaptability. When I read that article about Michael Phelps and they talked about how he trained and that he trained 7 days a week, like he knows that if you take one day off, which a lot of people do, you take one day off, you actually go backwards. And I follow this training. We're going to talk later that I show horses competitively. And I take that training very, very seriously. And if you fall back, every day you're getting better or getting worse. And if you're not putting yourself out there, every day that you don't post on social media or you don't make that phone call or you worry about, being too pushy or, it's one of those things that actually sets you back. But with Michael Phelps, I loved how he trained that in his training, they would set up things to fail. So like his swim cap they would give him a bad swim cap that would tear while he was training, or they would create extra waves in the pool, or the water would be too cold or too warm, and his glasses would fog out. It was all about, okay, how do I adapt to what's going on around me? And, I hate to bring up COVID. I know you and I are both professional speakers and they say, don't talk about COVID. But we have to, because what we can learn from that is that when COVID hit, that 30-day time span between March and April of 2020, we had 30 years of behavioral change I'm sorry, 15 years of behavioral change. Sorry, 15 years of behavioral change in 30 days. So what we learned is the businesses and the leaders had to adapt to running their businesses differently, changing how they marketed, changing how they trained, training how they onboarded people. And so if you look at that's such a great example of the importance of adaptability and flexibility too. I mean, that really is the key to putting, and I love your tie to risk, because you got to put yourself out there and see, how do I adapt when I have myself in a situation that maybe isn't the most comfortable.
So, Lynne, what you're saying is that typical 15 years of change we experienced in 30 days.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. No wonder why people struggled. Like I think about increases in mental health. During COVID, yes. I think about increases of people, drinking and, just unhealthy habits.
It's true. And communication was impacted our interpersonal communication was impacted in not so positive way. But also it did demonstrate that the organizations that flourished were the ones that could adapt, and that made, and I think, look at the education system. You and I both have backgrounds working with colleges, and just think of what a huge change we made in our educational system too, because they had to. It's amazing what we can do when we have to do it. And, human beings, we're amazing creatures that when we're faced with challenges, some people just step up and figure it out, but some people withdraw and use it as excuses. And I think that's why that adaptability and flexibility, I feel like that's such a huge part of competitive advantage. And again, I'm sure you see that with the professional athletes you work with too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Flexible, adaptable, being able to move on quickly, because there's so many things outside of our control when we're in sports, right? And even in business. So far we've talked about part of being, having a competitive advantage is focusing on what you can control and being flexible and adaptable. Are there any other questions or approaches that we can use to think about and gain, a competitive advantage?
Absolutely. So just kind of going in a little more detail is the whole concept of mindset, skill set, and tool set. So I think that's another really good tool. And oftentimes when I'm working with a group or an individual, I ask them. So literally we'd have 3 boxes: mindset, skill set, and tool set. And we look at what does it take to be successful, no matter what you do. So whether you're a professional football player, you're a salesperson, you're a sales professional, you're a business leader, whatever that might be, what do we need in each of those boxes? And so, mindset, we've talked about that a little bit. Obviously, attitude, self-care, confidence, being a good communicator, that goes in that kind of mindset bucket, among many other things. Just a few days ago, I was working in healthcare. And so obviously the mindset in healthcare is very different than the mindset in some other industries. And then when we look at skill set, what goes into that skill set? Again, it could be very different, but really list out all of the skills. And I feel like skills are more physical. So if you're a sales leader or a sales professional, you might think about listening, questioning, closing, handling objections, how language affects perception. All of those things might go in that skill set. If I'm a professional athlete, it might be, how do I start? How do I handle, getting tired? It might be throwing, catching, all those types of things. And then we look at tool set. And oftentimes I feel like that's the most recent addition. So we just added that recently, because there are, in almost all industries, there are certain tools that help us be more effective. And what I find, is that for most of us, we have access to a lot of tools, but we're not using them as much as we could. And so whether that is, going back to the James Clear, he talks about the British cycling team and how they did that 1%, and they looked at their uniforms, they looked at their bicycles, but then they taught them like how to wash their hands properly so that they didn't get sick as often. Or it might be using your CRM, it might be using project management, social media. Oftentimes there are these tools available. So I'll have people write down, what are all the tools that you have available? And a lot of corporations have tons of tools available. And then I'll ask people to go through the exercise and say, okay, what percentage are you using them? And so maybe you're using your CRM tool at 40%, or you're using your project management tool at even 80%. And then the question is, why? Why are we not at 100%? And I'm sure it won't surprise you. The number one answer I get, no matter what industry, is, oh, I'm too busy. I don't need it. I haven't used it in the past. And this we can't wait anymore. The tools, things are getting more competitive all the time. And we have to move beyond that I'm too busy to get better, because we know every industry, every organization, every day you're going forward or falling back. And, how do we set ourselves up? And usually what's missing is there's a disconnect in there that I don't understand. And I love to quote one of our team members here at Conversion-omics, and he says, in the absence of information, we default to our worst fear. So I don't know how to use it, but I'm embarrassed to say I don't know, or, we create this perception of too busy. And I think going through that exercise and really figuring out, okay, why am I not 100%, especially the tools? If you invest in a tool, you're like, oh, this is a great idea, Monday.com or, Salesforce or something else, but then we don't use it. And, we have to figure out, okay, what are those next steps? How do I get up to speed with myself or my team and make sure that I'm maximizing to work more efficiently, frankly? I mean, efficiency should be the key. Efficiency over perfection. That's what we try to focus on.
Yeah, I like that. And Lynn, I like the idea of like mindset, skill set, and tool set, because it makes you, and even writing that down. I was just writing down a few things that I was thinking about how that related to me as I was listening. And, even rating yourself on the mindset, how would you rate your attitude on a scale of 1 to 10? Could that grow? How would you rate your communication on a scale of 1 to 10? Could that grow? And I could see then when you write this all out, then you see, well, here are gaps. And here's where I really need to focus in on so that I do have that competitive advantage.
It's true. And I love the things that you called out: communication and attitude, 100% within our control, right? Like 100% in our control. How well we communicate is the key to our success. And so oftentimes looking at that, and it's interesting when it comes to attitude, I'm sure you've heard the quotation, attitudes are contagious, is yours worth catching? And it's interesting because that's been around forever. And lately that really stuck for me, because like I'm used to being, I'm on stage or I'm working with a client, and I really do everything I can to bring all the energy. I try to emulate the attitude and the energy and the excitement. And frankly, it's just because I love it. It's easy to do. But I found that with my own team, I wasn't bringing that same energy. So with my own team, I was, ho-hum or frustrated. And I'm like, whoa. Like if I'm not bringing that to my people that are close, or my personal relationships, that was such a disconnect. And as soon as I thought, gosh, because I share that with leaders all the time, because leaders sometimes, and again, I'm sure you've dealt with this, they hire people to come in and fix their team or fix their players or fix their people. And I have to roll it back and say, okay, are you demonstrating the skills, the attitude, the approach? Leaders who invest in the tool, but then don't use it themselves. And so that was really kind of a shocker for me. So it was good to have that and really go through those exercises, because even as coaches and consultants and professional speakers, I know you've got a lot that follow you. Gosh, are we demonstrating the skills that we're talking about on stage? So that was a good eye opener for me too.
Yeah, and sometimes we end up treating the people that we're closest with, like our family, or our own team, the worst. We don't always, really think about how are we showing up with our energy and our attitude. Lynn, I know you also speak a lot on sales, and so I'm kind of curious, as we're thinking about just creating a competitive advantage, how can we create anything, related to sales, like effective sales tools or anything that could help us create that competitive advantage?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because here's the thing. We're all in sales. Everybody in every role, we are all in sales. You're, again, selling your ideas, your concepts, helping people become aware of your brand, your identity. And so it's really important, first and foremost, just to accept that fact that's where we are. But here's a little bit. So when it comes, let's talk business specifically. So when it comes to competitive advantage, basically every industry boils down to your competitive advantage is tied to these 4 things: price, product, people, and price. Price, product, people, and process. Okay. Price, product, people, and process.
Got it.
So that's what it comes. No matter what industry you're in, when people are evaluating you or considering you for something, whether it's a product or a service or a speaking engagement, that's the 4 things that they're looking at. At the end of the day, the biggest driver to competitive advantage is actually people and process. So what is it like? It is. So people talk about price because we don't know. And the fact is, in almost all industries, our customers, whether you do B2B sales or B2C sales, so, business to business or business to consumer, at the end of the day, we buy from people. So what we really care about is people. We talk about price because we don't know what else to talk about. I mean, think about it. There's a lot of times people come, and in your business too, Sindra, they come to you like, we know we need a coach, we know we need a speaker, but you ask about budget, they're like, we have no idea. We don't know where to go. We don't. So it's not like shopping for milk. Well, even hiring, I hired someone to come out and, help with my trees, or I hire buy a car. I don't shop for cars all the time. So I default to price because I don't know anything else. But people and process are what really sells. And again, 100% in our control. So when we talk about people, do you put your best foot forward? And if I may, I'd like to share two of my favorite rules of sales. The number one rule of sales is this: teach your clients to be great clients.
Okay.
Teach your clients, help them understand. Make sure you understand where they come. Meet your clients where they are. If there's somebody that you've worked with, obviously you build up that rapport, but don't assume your clients know. Don't assume they understand. Don't assume they understand how to create an effective or appropriate budget. Don't assume they understand the steps in the process. Teach them. And that was what was exciting for me. So I came from the world of academia. I grew up in a little tiny farm town in southern Minnesota where basically everybody was farmers or teachers. I became a teacher. My sister now runs our 4th generation family farm. But so I started in the world of teaching. And I found that once I got into being a professional salesperson, that a lot of the strategies applied. Teach your clients to be good clients. And rule number 2 is help your clients feel successful. So what we want to do is when somebody approaches you, set them up for success. I think too often people think sales is about you looking good and you being the expert and, what's it going to take to get you into this coaching program or whatever else it might be. But really it's about helping our clients feel good about connecting with you, feel good about buying from you, feel good about working with you long-term, feel good about referring projects to you. So I find that applying those, so thinking about competitive advantage, that price, product, people, and process, but also applying those rules of sales, like teach your clients to be great clients. I find often when I work with successful sales professionals and leaders, sales and leadership is basically the same. When I say to them, well, tell me about your clients. Successful people always say, oh my gosh, my clients are the best. Here's why they're the best. They're awesome and they're, moving and they're changing and they're growing and all of this. And the people who are struggling, like, well, nobody wants to pay for anything. Everybody's looking for a free speaker. Nobody pays for quality. And so I know that that's one of the breakdowns is that good leaders, good sales professionals set their customers up for success. And the other part of that, and I'll just touch on this briefly, is when it comes to process, convenience is key. So if you're looking at your business and figuring out how do I make it incredibly easy for people to buy, if you think about online shopping, like that's how people go. It's super clear. I want this. I see a picture. I read a review. I push buy, the button that says purchase. And if we're not doing that, we want to make sure that we create that similar experience. So really convenience, when we say process, convenience is key.
Yeah, I love that. I love those 2 rules. Teach your clients how to be great clients and how help your clients feel successful. And I was thinking about, well, how could I do that? To me, like teaching your clients to be great clients, that means to me that I maybe set them up for like what my expectations are, provide them with the resources that they might have. I'm just thinking about coaching clients that I have, right? And, kind of sharing the importance of being on time or, canceling our sessions 48 hours in advance. Those are the kind of things I'm thinking about related to that. And then help your clients feel successful. So celebrate their successes with them. What else would you add that, would help us everyday people in business and in life and in sport use these 2 sales rules?
Wonderful. Great question. So what I love, you always ask all the best questions, Sindra. I'm just going to say, you make my heart so happy. All right. So here's the thing. If we have time, we might talk about how language affects perception. So language not only sets you up for success, but creates a successful experience with your customers or your team members if you're a business leader. And there's a certain language that is more successful and drives business. And what you're talking about when it comes to expectation setting, which that is the key. Like when I say teach your clients, we go clients, that means expectation setting. How do you prepare? And I'm sure you've learned this in your experience too, but over the years, you can't assume anybody knows anything. Like even saying, bring a piece of paper and a pen to your next coaching meeting. You would we're prepared people. So I have a stack of paper and 8 pens in case this one dies, I can throw it and bring in a new one. But there's nothing too small. Make sure it's quiet. Make sure you book time before and after. So expectations is a big thing about it. And how to maximize your investment. That's usually how I tell people to maximize our time together. Here's how to prepare. But also going back to language, the key is making it easy for people to move forward. So we talk about risk aversion. People are afraid to invest. Their trust is a big part of confidence right now. So always be talking about next steps. What is our next logical step? And again, you're the minimal encourager. What is the next smallest, most important step to take place? And so I like to always outline that. Every conversation with a prospective client or an existing customer, every interaction, whether it's phone call, email, Zoom meeting, face-to-face, every single contact is clearly outlined next steps. Make the path forward easy to follow. And too often, I'll ask this question to people all the time about I'll breaking down their sales process or their onboarding process or recruiting process. And I'll say, okay, so what did you use the words next steps? Because it triggers a part of our brain. It goes from emotional to logical. And so by saying next steps, and how about dealing with conflict or an upset customer or a challenging situation? As soon as you start talking about next steps, it moves people away from that frustration towards solution. And so getting that in your repertoire, and again, 100% in your control, just clearly outline those next steps is a big part of helping your customers, teach them to be good customers and set them up for success.
Yeah, I love those ideas. And I think about different ways that you could even say next steps, right? It's like, here are all the ways that we can work together, or after we're done with this part, we can continue to work together in this way, right?
Exactly.
That's also what I was thinking about. So, Lynne, you just said language creates perception. So I'd love for you to unpack that a little bit more. And as we kind of think about just communication in general and why that's really important. So what does that mean to you, language creates perception?
So as you and I discussed, so I have a master's degree in communication. I and only because I have spent my whole life being fascinated by why do people do what they do and say what they say. So I have 2 sisters, so there's 3 of us. And I always wonder, like the same parents group in the same house, like how do we have completely different approaches and perceptions about the universe and people and situations? And so that led me to this studying communication in general, and which is fascinating. I mean, it's one of those things, as I've told you before, it's still considered to be the 4th most worthless advanced degree you can have. It's like, with no disrespect to basket weaving, art history, philosophy, like I love all of
Are those the top 3?
Yes, I think so. But the fact is, understanding communication and how every word in this day and age, every single word, and there's so many examples of how saying one thing can go one direction or the other. So really thinking about the language that you use, and I always share, some valuable words. So, and maybe if it's okay with you, if I could share a couple next steps.
I'd love
to that. Okay, so
I'd love to hear that.
This is worth the price of admission right here, which I know was very low. In fact, I think it's 0. So it's definitely going to cover that. Yeah, I think it's free. I hate to use the word free. I think it was complimentary, but yes, I will throw it out there. So here's the thing. If you want to be seen as more influential, more positive, a better leader, a better sales professional, and frankly, just a better positive influencer, the most valuable word you can use is let's. So let's talk about what's important to you. Let's talk about what happened. Let's take a look at our calendars and find a good time to meet. Let's address the biggest opportunities for us to grow and improve. Let's is the most valuable word for a couple of reasons. One, it shows action, which only action changes things. You'll hear this with all the time. Action, action, action. And so let's is a word that demonstrates collaboration as well. So a big part of competitive advantage is collaboration, working with others, learning from others, helping others grow and improve. So let's is the ideal word to use that demonstrates movement and collaboration. Again, if I have a person that is in the depth of a very challenging situation, I could say, well, let's talk about what happened and let's work together to find a solution. Like, how do we together, let's unpack the steps, how we got here, so that we can make sure we can improve this process in the future. So let's demonstrate all of those things: movement, action, collaboration, partnership. Let's will work with your internal customers, your team members. It'll work with your external customers, the people who buy products and services from you. It'll even work with your significant others, maybe your siblings. It will not work with your children, Sindra, just so you know. Your kids do not want to collaborate with you. I have tried, and I have found that it works on me. My nieces will say, come on, Auntie, let's go to McDonald's, and it totally works on me. But it's one of those words that's really, really valuable. And for especially in sales or leadership, for people who maybe aren't super confident, super direct communicators, it's a word that feels comfortable. And for people who aren't, but even those like big, those big giant personalities are like, follow me because I'm the leader. By using let's, it really also makes them more approachable. So super valuable. And then just one other term I'll share with you today, in addition to next steps. So next steps in that group too, is the word solutions.
Okay.
Just being able to say, let's find the right solution for you. Let's talk about a solution, whether that's looking at, a mindset issue, whether that's looking at helping someone purchase something, on board, dealing with conflict. When we can start talking about, let's make sure we're focusing on a solution. Together, we can find a solution. Again, it moves more over to the logical part of our brain, and it gets people moving forward, which is usually what we want. And so making sure, also the research will show you that when we're listening to somebody or working with somebody who says the word solutions, we inherently perceive them as having a higher value. So we're not just selling coaching, we're selling solutions to help your business grow and improve, or help you improve as an elite athlete. And so the more we can do that, it's just perceived to be higher value. And if I can put it frankly, people will pay more for solutions than they will for products and services. And so being focused on those deliverables and the solutions that you can provide is really valuable. Even if you don't know what they are yet, it might just be, hey, together we'll work on finding the right solution.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So the three that you just mentioned is let's, and then next steps, and then solutions. Yes. And as I'm listening, Lynn, I'm thinking about the times I've been on meetings with you, like with a client, right? And you do all of this. I think about how incredible you are at teaching clients to be great clients. And even like in one instance, teaching me and setting me up for success to engage in the speaking engagement, right? Like I knew exactly what was going to happen and there wasn't any questions. And you set everybody up for success because you were really clear on expectations, right?
Appreciate that.
Yeah. And I know you say that 85% of our professional success is based on our communication. 85.
Mm-hmm. Harvard Business. Yeah, that's a study by Harvard Business. Yeah, you're only as good as you can communicate. And what's fascinating is that it's doesn't matter what industry you're in. You could be the world's greatest computer programmer, but if you can't communicate properly to your team or your customers, then it's just lost. All that brilliance is lost. And so really being thoughtful about how we communicate with people, it really is the key to success, no matter what room you're, what room you're in, what industry you're in. I think about sports too. Think about being on a relay team and how important I'm fascinated by that. So like you, I was a runner in high school, and, the handoffs, whether it's on a track or it's in business, how we communicate and set each other for success is really important. And so that's why thinking about language and thinking about timing and responsiveness, when we were speaking earlier about what can we control, responsiveness is really important. And how quickly do we adapt? I would say bad news is more like milk than wine. It doesn't get better with time. So even just jumping in when there's a challenge is really important.
So is there anything we need to consider, not about just like what we communicate, but how we communicate it?
Oh, absolutely. As you well know, nonverbal is actually, what is it? Verbal is 7%, and the 93% is how we communicate. So thinking about things like, eye contact and voice modulation and rate. And this is something too, because everybody has a different approach, how they communicate, and being really thoughtful and intentional. A big word for me is always about being intentional. How do we approach our customers? How do we approach our team? Are we thoughtful and are we intentional in what we do? And I feel like that's a big part of how we communicate too.
Well, I think of confidence as so important in communication. And I love talking about confidence on the podcast because, first of all, even elite athletes that I work with and really successful business owners and CEOs, people think that they don't lack confidence, but sometimes their confidence can come and go, right? And a feeling of confidence definitely can come and go. And it's about, developing the skill of confidence. So do you have any suggestions for us on how we can work to communicate with confidence? Is that such a big part of communication?
Absolutely. I had to write down skill of confidence. I love that because it is a skill. Oftentimes people feel like you're either confident or you're not. And certainly I think a lot of people, it's the way they communicate comes across either confidently or not, but confidence is a skill. So really what we recommend is plan, prepare, practice, and perform. So what helps you grow with confidence? Plan, prepare, practice, and perform. Because a big part of confidence for most people is preparation, really. And I'll ask people, like, describe a situation when you feel really confident. And oftentimes it's either a situation they have experience with, it's something they're passionate about, it's something they enjoy. And so take the time to set yourself up for success too. And that takes planning. I use the example all the time. We've got the Olympics coming up, which I'm so excited about. But nobody wakes up one day and says, hey, I'm 32 years old. I'm going to go compete in the Olympics this summer. Like, it takes planning. It takes preparation. And that means having the tools, having the resources. Practicing is so important. And I feel like everybody knows. In the world of sports, you play like you practice. So whether you're my ninth grade niece playing on her traveling basketball team, or you're an elite professional athlete playing in the professional, you play like you practice. But gosh, in the world of business, I'll ask them, so plan, prepare, practice, perform. Do you agree? Yes. All right. What percentage of the time do you spend on these things? And practice is like, oh, well, I don't have time to practice, or I practice while I'm, working with people. And that just is not a good approach. So you do need to practice even the language. So I always share these tips on language. People are like, yeah, I love that. That makes sense. But you can't wait until you're talking to a customer before you ever say solutions or next steps. Like, you have to put the time into practicing so you can be successful. And then it's a performance. I've heard you talk about that whole flush it down, when something goes wrong, you flush it. And I love that because that's a performance. And some of your people that you coach, literally do that because that's part of the performance. And people want to work with the best version of you. And I think we owe that. I think we owe that to our teams. I think we owe that to our customers. And when I say performance, I don't mean everything should be honest. Transparency, integrity, trustworthiness is important. But boy, I want to make sure when I get on stage, when I get, with my team or my customers, they get the best version of me, So the healthiest version of me, the best dressed version of me, all of that lends itself to the experience. And I feel like that's a big part of confidence, look good, feel good, do good. And so all the things that we can control, we bring that, and that also helps drive up our confidence.
Yeah, I love that. So the 4 P's of confidence, that's what we're going to call it.
Yeah.
And prepare, practice, and perform. And there is actually quite a bit of research. Like if you look at the research on self-efficacy, that one of the best ways to grow in self-efficacy is different than confidence because it's like your belief in your ability to do one task, right?
Sure.
But our preparation and our past performances are really important, right? So remind ourselves of the times we have been successful. So we've talked about a lot of things so far, Lynne, competitive advantage, communication. I'd love to hear about your experience just as a woman in the construction industry. That's what you were doing before you started Conversion-omics. And I just think about all the things we've talked about, really it can be impacted by environment. And it's very difficult sometimes for women to be in male-dominated spaces, right? I think about my work with football, for example, or, when I'm speaking as a group of all men,
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about, is there anything that we've talked about today that is particularly important for you in this space in construction? And just tell us a little bit about what you've learned from that experience.
No, I appreciate that. So being a woman in construction, where I'm still very, very active in certain organizations, but it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. So when I was first recruited back in the 90s, which feels like a lifetime ago, it was very common to be. In fact, when I became a leader in the organization, I was one of the only women. And so what was great, and I feel so lucky and so thankful, is that I had a great mentor that really taught me a lot. Some of it was kind of tough love. He's the one who taught me to not apologize all the time. So, some of those tough lessons. But I'm super proud to be in the industry. But it's interesting. So even today, I had a week where I did all construction events very recently, just a couple of weeks ago. And on Tuesday, I was in Atlanta, and I was in a room with, I think it was 130 people. And of those 130, and I'm on stage during the keynote, and there was 2 women, me and the event planner, the only women in the entire room. And then I had another event on Thursday, actually here in Minneapolis, and that was like 50-50. And so I'm like, okay, we're heading in the right direction. And then on Saturday, I was out in Wisconsin, and it was actually a women in construction group, and it was almost all women. So I was like, it's exactly like how my career has been. And so it is one of those things that it definitely makes you even more aware of how are you communicating? How do you set yourself up for success? Being flexible and adaptable and having thick skin, for sure, is a part of it, because it's just, it's a different, some people communicate differently, not necessarily male, female, but just different ways of communicating. And in construction, a lot of people are high Ds, very dominant, which they have to be. Like, they have this vision of the future that doesn't exist yet. They're going to build it. You have to appreciate that. But I've learned a lot. In fact, like I said, the gentleman who recruited me into the industry, I quote him all the time. He was a real gift in my life, because he gave me a lot of opportunities and really pushed me. And he's not a pushy guy. He's like the nicest person, but he pushed me to kind of get outside, and I wouldn't be where I am without him. It really it shows how one person can have such a massive impact on your life. And frankly, I'm really thankful. Because even today, I'm a full-time speaker now, and I run Conversion-omics. That's what I do full-time, but I still work. The construction industry does a lot. We build homes for people in need. We work with veterans in need, and we have families. We help families who are going through chemical dependency. And so I'm very, very proud of that background, and I'm thankful for it too, although it was tough. It wasn't always easy, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I bet you learned a lot about confidence and communication, right? And some skills that have now helped you build Conversion-omics. So we can't end without asking about your role as an equestrian, because there's a lot of athletes who listen to this. And actually, I know of some equestrians who listen to the podcast. So tell us, I know. So tell us a bit about, because riding and mindset is so interesting, because, when you're one with the horse, and how the horse can really, be impacted by your own emotions and really what's going on in your body. So what have you learned about mindset or success or developing your business from being an equestrian athlete? So just tell us a bit about that.
I'll do my best to keep it short, because this is my favorite topic. So
we could have spent a whole hour on that.
We could have, yes. I was so worried you wouldn't have enough to talk about, Sandra. I don't know what my concern was. So yes, so I have been riding horses since I was born. Basically, my parents literally met on horseback, so I've been riding my whole life. And here's the thing: I'm not the best rider, but I love. And again, it's a gift. I figure I'm 53 years old. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to compete, but I'm going to do it as long as I possibly can. And what I've learned over the years, it's interesting, because I do apply the strategies to. At one point in my career, I had a huge national sales team, and I used the same strategies. With my equine partner, my job is to keep her happy and healthy. And with my sales team, my job is to keep them happy and healthy and set them up for success. And what I've learned is I'm maybe not the world's greatest rider, but I work harder I work as hard as I can, and I am super conscientious about, what right now, I'm only have one horse now because with my travel schedule, I can't do more than that. But I make sure she has the right food. I make sure that she enjoys her job, that the tack fits her comfortably. On the day before the event, I'm very careful about how I train. What is it like for her before we enter the arena? Is she in a place where she's confident? Does she understand what I want? Communication. Anybody out here who rides horses knows communication is key. And I see others that assume that they understand. And I think that's the key, is just trying to adapt and, set her up for success. And, her self-care is way better than my own. Just, in fact, she has a massage this evening. So, really setting her up. And it's something that, what's crazy about it is it's similar what I do. So I do speed events, so poles, barrels. I've done other things in the past, but that's what I do now. And we use laser timers. So our runs go to the 1,000th of a second. So you can train all year and you can put hours and hours, and you can get to that second pole and have a stumble and be immediately disqualified, just like in the, 110 hurdles or something like that. So it is being able to brush it off and adapt. And I'm trying to, I'm super competitive, and I'm trying to hey, maybe a win now is different than a win when I was young. Maybe a win now is having a good run and enjoying the day and cheering on my family and friends, because it's really a wonderful sport and something that my mom competed until she was in her 70s. So it's really a cool place, and I want to emulate that. My mom is a warrior. She's a pocket warrior. She's about this tall, but she's amazing. And I've learned a lot from that. I think just that whole idea about paying attention to others and thinking about what do they need and and adapting. Every horse is different. Every day is different. Every season is different. Every arena. And so really trying to work on that adaptability and flexibility, which doesn't come naturally to me. I'm a control freak. And so just being able to do that, I think I've learned a lot in my personal life, and definitely applied those strategies to business as well.
I love that you care so much about your horse and that you're really thinking about her self-care. What's your horse's name?
Well, her registered name is Just Come Unwound, which is a George Strait song, which I bought her when I turned 50, and it seems so appropriate. But our barn name is Spice, because she is spicy. She's all attitude. She's also it's the smallest horse I've ever had. And she is all 100% attitude. So she's spicy. I call her Spice Girl, but she's pretty spicy.
I love it. Lynne, we've talked about so many things today, including mindset, skill set, toolkit, competitive advantage. 80% of our communication, right, or of our success is based on our communication. So what have I not asked you?
So the very last question that everybody asks me is, what does conversion-omics mean? Where did that even come from? So
I would love to know.
All right. So, and I love you pronounced it correctly. A lot of people don't. So thank you for that. But conversion-omics, my personal mantra in life is leave everything better than you found it. So I'm a very eco-conscientious person. I try to think about, people and situations and the park that I ride through or the restaurant I went to. So that concept of leaving everything better than you found it. So conversion-omics, the first part, conversion, which means, the process of changing or causing something to change or improve, was really important to me. With my background in education, I'm always thinking about how do I, even if it's just making somebody's day better, like somebody, that I see that's, doing something, I want to be appreciative. And then omics, which comes from economics. So how do you use your resources, whether that's time, intellectual property, money, people, resources is really important. And so that's where we came up with Conversion-omics, our goal being leave every event or project better than we found it. So being that constant positive resource for people is really important. And so that's how we came up with it.
Well, that sounds perfect given what you do. And let's talk a little bit about that. I'm one of the speakers listed under Conversion-omics. Obviously, Lynne is too. But tell us a little bit about what Conversion-omics is and what you do. And if people are listening and they are looking for a speaker or a trainer, how can they find out more about Conversion-omics?
Wonderful. Well, please join us. So, of course, we're on social media. Conversion-omics is on all the platforms. I spend the bulk of my time on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm trying to do Instagram. You rock at that, by the way, Cinder. You were like the role model. And your YouTube is fantastic. So we are there, but our goal is to someday grow to that level. Or please check out our website. It's just www.conversion-omics.com. And anybody who goes there, that comes directly to me as well. So if you are working on an event or a project, you need coaching, consulting, training, keynote speakers. If you are a speaker and you want to branch out, please reach out. We love partnering. We are a boutique firm, so our goal isn't to be the biggest, it is to be the best. And we do a lot of things differently. So if you'd like to just learn about those options, I'd be happy to set up a time. I love connecting with people. And anybody who's a fan of Syndra, I know you have to be awesome. So please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Lynne. I so am grateful for you to be on today and to share with us your wisdom. And here's my summary of today. We talked about what you can control and what you can't control. Listing that out is really helpful to help you think about having a competitive advantage. We talked about flexibility and adaptability, mindset, skill set, toolkit, right? And again, listing that out. And then where are your gaps to understand your competitive advantage? We talked about 4 Ps of confidence. 4 Ps of having a competitive advantage. There we go. Price, product, people, and process. And then again, the 4 Ps of confidence. There's lots of Ps today, so that's why I said that wrong. Plan, prepare, practice, and perform. And then your words to like win, right? And to use is next steps, and solutions. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm grateful that you're here, Lynne.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.